Love is supposed to feel liberating, but for many, it feels like a trap. It is a paradox. The deeper the connection, the more vulnerable you become. And with vulnerability comes the perception of loss, the loss of control, independence, and identity. For some, this sensation is terrifying. When love begins to consume your thoughts, dictate your actions, and shape your decisions, it can feel as if you are no longer yourself. You compromise routines, preferences, and boundaries in ways that seem small at first but accumulate over time. The self you once knew begins to blur, replaced by a version that caters to another. This fear is not weakness. It is the mind recognizing risk. Emotional surrender comes with cost. Those who have experienced betrayal, codependency, or the dissolution of past relationships often internalize this fear. Love becomes a battlefield of control versus surrender, independence versus connection. In this video, we will explore why love sometimes feels like losing yourself, the psychological mechanisms behind it, and how to engage with love without sacrificing your identity. You will learn why boundaries, awareness, and emotional discipline are essential, and how to navigate intimacy strategically while maintaining autonomy. Because falling in love does not have to mean losing yourself, but only if you understand the rules of the mind and the nature of attachment. The sensation of losing yourself in love is rooted in a clash between two fundamental human needs: connection and autonomy. On one hand, the mind craves intimacy, validation, and belonging. On the other, it demands control, identity, and independence. When love intensifies, these needs can conflict. The more you give of yourself, the more your routines, priorities, and even your decisions shift to accommodate another person. Without awareness, this shift can feel like erasure. Psychologically, this happens because attachment rewires focus. Your thoughts, emotions, and energy begin to orbit someone else. Decisions you once made independently now consider another's reactions, desires, or approval. The more deeply invested you are, the stronger this gravitational pull becomes. Love, when unmanaged, subtly replaces self-priorities with relational priorities. This is why some feel their identity slipping away, as though the person they once were is fading beneath the weight of the connection. Fear intensifies when past experiences exist. People who have experienced codependency, betrayal, or emotional manipulation are hyper-aware of how love can consume autonomy. Their minds anticipate potential loss before it occurs. They recognize patterns in themselves: over-accommodation, emotional over-investment, or prioritizing another's comfort over their own. This anticipation reinforces the feeling that love equals surrender, even when the relationship is healthy. Cultural narratives contribute as well. Movies, literature, and social media often glorify self-sacrifice in love. True love is depicted as giving endlessly, bending for another, and dissolving boundaries. The mind internalizes these messages, linking love with loss. When real life fails to match these ideals, or when personal boundaries are challenged, fear emerges. The risk of losing oneself becomes a tangible concern. The physiological response cannot be ignored. Love triggers emotional chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, cortisol, creating intensity that the mind interprets as both pleasure and threat. Heightened emotions amplify the perception of control lost. Emotional investment can feel overwhelming, and without awareness, the brain interprets this intensity as a risk to autonomy. The paradox is clear. Love is both desired and feared. It promises fulfillment while threatening self-preservation. The mind responds instinctively, sometimes retreating, sometimes overcompensating, often creating tension between connection and independence. Recognizing these psychological dynamics is essential to navigate love without feeling consumed. Ultimately, When love feels like losing yourself, it is not necessarily because of the other person. It is because the mind perceives vulnerability, unpredictability, and emotional investment as threats to identity. The key is understanding these mechanisms, maintaining awareness, and employing strategies that allow deep connection while preserving autonomy. Love does not demand self-erasure. It demands mastery of self within intimacy. Look around, and the signs of self-loss in love are everywhere. People compromise endlessly, ignore personal goals, and adapt to the whims of their partners until their own voice is barely audible. Social media portrays endless devotion as ideal, but real life exposes the consequences: fatigue, resentment, and a creeping sense of identity erosion. This is the reality for many. Love becomes a force that reshapes, sometimes consumes, the self. In personal relationships, boundaries are often the first casualties. A partner's needs, preferences, or emotions start to dominate decision-making. What you once did for yourself, hobbies, social interactions, even career choices, begins to shift subtly in service of another. The initial compromises seem small, but over time, they accumulate, creating a sense that your identity is slipping away. You begin to wonder if your choices are truly yours or simply reactions to the expectations of love. Emotionally, the brain reinforces this dynamic. The chemicals released during attachment, dopamine, oxytocin, cortisol, heighten emotional responsiveness. Pleasure and anxiety intertwine, making the intensity of connection feel both addictive and overwhelming. For someone sensitive to control or past relational trauma, this physiological response magnifies the fear of self-loss. Every decision, conversation, or interaction carries weight, intensifying the perception that love requires surrender. Culturally, the narratives are misleading. Films, books, and songs glorify self-sacrifice as proof of love. Messages like "love means putting someone else first" are often taken literally, teaching the mind to equate intimacy with self-erasure. People internalize these ideals, believing that a truly loving relationship demands the dissolution of personal boundaries. The fear emerges when real experiences confront these ingrained expectations, a clash between desire for connection and instinct for self-preservation. Even in daily life, this fear manifests subtly. A person may hesitate to express opinions, make requests, or assert needs out of concern for upsetting a partner. Their identity is filtered through the lens of approval. Over time, the habit of adjustment becomes automatic. Self-suppression is mistaken for compromise, and autonomy feels like a luxury that cannot coexist with love. Yet this reality is also instructive. The fear of losing oneself is not irrational. It is a signal. It indicates where boundaries are weak, where identity is at risk, and where the mind requires conscious control. Awareness transforms this fear from a paralyzing force into a guide for intentional behavior. By recognizing the mechanisms at play, emotional chemistry, cultural messaging, relational dynamics, and past experience, you gain power over your reactions and choices. The truth is clear. Love does not have to erase the self. The sense of loss occurs when attention, energy, and decision-making are seeded unconsciously. When approached strategically, love can coexist with autonomy. People can experience deep intimacy, connection, and commitment without losing their identity. The challenge is to navigate relationships with awareness, boundaries, and emotional mastery, turning fear into a tool for conscious engagement rather than surrender. To prevent losing yourself in love, the first step is awareness. Recognize the subtle ways that emotional investment begins to shift your priorities, energy, and decisions. Notice when choices are made to please or accommodate someone else at the expense of your identity. Awareness allows you to intervene before patterns solidify into unconscious behavior. Next, set unshakable boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are a framework for autonomy. Define what you will and will not compromise on: your time, values, ambitions, and personal space. Communicate these boundaries clearly and consistently. When boundaries are respected, fear diminishes because the mind knows that engagement with love does not require surrender of self. Boundaries signal strength and self-respect, and paradoxically, they deepen intimacy by fostering clarity and trust. Practice deliberate self-prioritization. Falling in love does not mean neglecting yourself. Maintain routines, hobbies, and relationships outside of your romantic connection. Invest in personal growth, intellectual pursuits, and physical well-being. When you continue to honor your individual life, love becomes a complement rather than a replacement of self. Fear recedes because autonomy is preserved. Exercise emotional discipline. Attachment triggers intense physiological responses: the rush of dopamine, the pull of oxytocin, the anxiety of anticipation. These feelings can feel overwhelming, but emotional mastery allows you to navigate them without losing control. Pause before reacting, reflect before deciding, and observe emotions without letting them dictate your identity or actions. Emotional discipline transforms fear into conscious choice. Cultivate deliberate vulnerability. Paradoxically, preserving your selfhood requires measured openness. Share your thoughts, feelings, and experiences gradually and intentionally. Vulnerability, when controlled, strengthens connection while maintaining autonomy. It demonstrates trust and presence, but on terms that protect your identity. Over time, this practice builds both intimacy and confidence, turning fear into empowerment. Reframe love as a strategic engagement, not surrender. Love does not require giving up your mind or identity. It is a relationship between two conscious, autonomous individuals. By reframing connection as a deliberate choice rather than a passive experience, you maintain power over your life. Each interaction, compromise, and emotional investment is intentional. Love becomes a space for growth, not a trap for self-loss. Finally, monitor relational dynamics continuously. Observe patterns, reassess boundaries, and adapt when necessary. Do not allow habitual compromise to erode autonomy. Fear diminishes when you know that engagement is controlled, deliberate, and balanced. You remain whole while participating fully in intimacy. By combining awareness, boundaries, self-prioritization, emotional discipline, deliberate vulnerability, strategic framing, and relational vigilance, you gain the ability to love without losing yourself. You engage fully, connect deeply, and preserve autonomy. Fear is no longer a prison but a guide, signaling where attention, caution, or adjustment is necessary. You become both capable of love and untouchable in your selfhood. Love does not have to mean losing yourself. The fear that intimacy erases identity is not weakness. It is a warning from your mind, signaling where control, boundaries, and autonomy are at risk. But fear can be mastered. With awareness, emotional discipline, and strategic engagement, you can experience love fully without surrendering who you are. Maintaining boundaries is the key. They protect your priorities, values, and independence while allowing connection to flourish. Self-prioritization ensures that your life, passions, and goals continue to thrive alongside the relationship. Emotional discipline keeps attachment from overwhelming reason, letting you navigate intensity without compromise of identity. And deliberate vulnerability allows you to engage meaningfully, opening to connection on your terms. Reframing love as a conscious choice rather than a surrender transforms the experience. When you engage intentionally, every interaction, compromise, and moment of intimacy becomes an exercise in balance between closeness and autonomy, connection, and selfhood. Fear becomes a tool, guiding your awareness and decisions rather than dictating them. The people who master this mindset are untouchable. They can love deeply, passionately, and authentically without losing their identity. They are cautious yet courageous, aware yet open, strong yet capable of connection. Love becomes a space of growth, fulfillment, and empowerment, not a battlefield of surrender. Remember, fear is not the enemy. It is the signal that guides mastery. Preserve yourself, engage intentionally, and approach love strategically. When you do, love will enhance your life instead of consuming it. You will connect fully, remain whole, and navigate intimacy with confidence. Because the strongest love is not reckless. It is deliberate, disciplined, and untouchable, just like you.